The grand rotunda of the Galactic Council was a monument to unity, a colossal sphere of polished, pale stone that floated in the heart of the neutral system of Therid. Inside, the air hummed with the low murmur of 1,000 delegates representing hundreds of species. There forms a dizzying array of carapace, fur, and bioluminescent skin. Light, soft, and impartial, washed over them from the central core, the source of the Council's power. Ambassador Vikar of the Thelan Dominion rose from his designated platform, his slender, reptilian form casting a shadow against the glow. His scales, a muted copper, were flat and unreflective, a sign of his distress. In his three-fingered hand, he held a data crystal, its surface glimmering with recorded testimony. "Esteemed Council," Vikar began, his voice a low, sibilant hiss that carried across the chamber. "I bring a matter of grave importance. A species, relatively new to the galactic stage, has been attacked without provocation." A ripple of disinterest moved through the assembly. Minor squabbles between fringe species were a constant, tiresome background noise to the grand affairs of the galaxy. Vikar continued, his gaze fixed on the central podium where the supreme arbiter, a massive, insectoid creature, sat in silent judgment. "The attackers are the Cathar Empire. The victims are the humans." The mention of the Cathar drew a few sharpened glances. The Cathar were a known quantity, aggressive, expansionist, and possessing a formidable military. The name humans, however, elicited blank stares from the majority. Vikar activated the data crystal. A holographic projection flickered to life above the assembly, showing a small, ungainly collection of ships on a deep space patrol. They were boxy, utilitarian, and seemed to lack the elegant curves common to galactic designs. Then the Cathar fleet arrived. It was a massacre of the most brutal kind. Energy lances tore through the smaller vessels with contemptuous ease, turning them into expanding clouds of debris and silent, frozen bodies. A senator from the Gravian enclave, a being composed of a thick, viscous fluid held within a crystalline suit, gurgled with amusement. "A primitive species, Ambassador. They are barely out of their gravity cradle. The Cathar have done us a favor, removing a potential future nuisance." "Is that what you think?" Vikar's voice cut through the chamber, sharp and cold. "You see a slaughter, I see a declaration of war." The Cathar Ambassador, a hulking, quadrupedal creature with a hide like hammered iron, stepped forward. "The enclave is correct," he rumbled, his voice a grinding of tectonic plates. "We encountered a hostile force in a system we were claiming. We neutralized them, our right by the laws of—" "Your laws, Ambassador Girax," Vikar interrupted, his forked tongue flickering in agitation. "The galactic community has no such law that permits the unprovoked extermination of a sentient species." "They were weak," Girax boomed, his four legs stamping in defiance. "The strong claim, the weak die. This is the way of the universe." A murmur of agreement passed through many of the council members. It was the pragmatic, and often unspoken, rule of the galaxy. Peace was maintained not by laws but by the threat of annihilation. Vikar closed his eyes, a human gesture he had learned to emulate. "I have studied the humans," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "They are different. Their home world, Earth, has a gravitational pull that would cripple most of you here. Their atmosphere is corrosive. Their evolutionary path has been one of relentless conflict. They are not a species to be conquered. They are a species to be destroyed utterly and completely, or they will destroy you." The chamber fell into a stunned silence. Vikar's reputation for measured intelligence was well known. His sudden, violent proclamation was shocking. "Your fear makes you speak madness, Thelan," Girax snarled. "My fleet is already en route to their home system. We will show you the proper way to handle a primitive pest. We will raise their world and scatter the ashes. Their death will be the lesson." Vikar looked at the Cathar Ambassador, a strange light in his amber eyes. It was not fear, it was pity. "No, Ambassador Girax," he said softly, "your death will be the lesson, and you have just ensured that the whole galaxy will be forced to learn it. The Supreme Arbiter raised a skeletal, multi-jointed arm, signaling the end of the debate. The matter is closed. The Thelan Dominion's concerns are noted. The Cathar Empire will be asked to respect Council borders, but we have no authority to police their military actions against non-member species. The Council is adjourned. The delegates began to disperse, their murmurs a wave of dismissal. Vikar remained standing, watching the holographic projection of the destroyed human ships fade. He saw the small, determined faces of the crews, their eyes wide not with fear but with something else. A burning, quiet fury. He knew with a certainty that chilled his blood that the Cathar had just sealed their own doom, and perhaps the doom of the very peace the Council pretended to uphold. In the command pit of the Cathar flagship, the unforgiving Commander Vorlag was a monument to confidence. His massive frame was strapped into a command harness, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical display. The holographic map of the Sol system glowed before him, a simple configuration of 9 planets orbiting a bright, yellow sun. "The humans are a species of maximal resistance, Commander," his tactical officer droned, reading from a data slate. "They have a history of conflict, but their technology is primitive. Their energy weapons are inefficient and their shielding is." "Spare me the detailed analysis," Vorlag growled. "I saw the footage. They are soft. They break easily. The only reason the initial engagement took more than a minute was because they were so small and we had to hunt them down." He looked at the third planet, Earth. It was a world of blue and green swirling clouds obscuring its surface. It looked like a jewel, but Vorlag knew it was a tomb. His orders were to subjugate this species, to show the galaxy that the Cathar Empire was not to be tested. He would do more than that. He would make an example of them. "Begin our approach. Launch all assault wings. I want a full orbital bombardment pattern. No survivors." "Yes, Commander, moving in now." The Cathar fleet, a formation of jagged, dark ships bristling with energy projectors, surged forward. They were the pride of the Empire, a hammer that had crushed dozens of civilizations. The human defensive satellites, floating listlessly in their orbits, offered no challenge. They were inert, passive. Vorlag's secondary eyes narrowed in contempt. "Look at them," he said to his bridge crew, a group of reptilian warriors. "They can't even mount a proper defense. Their weapons are cold. They are too primitive to even know they are being attacked." As if in answer to his boast, the inert satellites began to move. They didn't power up energy weapons. Instead, their hulls split open, revealing rows of cylindrical objects. With a flash of chemical propulsion, they launched. Hundreds of them. "What are those?" Vorlag demanded. "Unknown, kinetic projectiles, Commander. High-mass, low-yield explosive. They won't even scratch our shields." His confidence was a solid wall until the first projectile hit. It didn't impact the shield. It didn't even slow down. The kinetic energy, the raw, brutal force of a shuttle-sized slug of tungsten moving at a fraction of the speed of light, was too much. It punched through the shield like it was paper, tearing through the hull of a heavy cruiser and blasting out the other side in a spray of debris and flame. "Impossible," the tactical officer screamed. "Our shields are rated for energy weapons. They're not designed for—" The ship shuddered as another projectile struck it, glancing off the armor and tearing a massive gash in the ship's flank. Vorlag was thrown from his harness, his head cracking against the command console. "Evasive maneuvers," he roared, scrambling to his feet. "Return fire, destroy those satellites." The human satellites were already reloading, their simple, robust systems far faster than the Cathar's complex energy capacitors. The second volley was worse. It tore through the Cathar fleet, turning warships into expanding clouds of debris. The bridge of the Unforgiving was filled with the shrieks of the dying and the crackle of ruptured conduits. Vorlag stared at the tactical display, watching his magnificent fleet disintegrate. The human ships, the ones he had dismissed as primitive, were now moving. Their acceleration was brutal, crushing. He could see their pilots were maneuvering with a ferocity that defied reason. They were using the Cathar's own tactics against them, swarming and overwhelming. "It's a trap," Vorlag whispered. "We didn't attack a primitive species, we attacked—" What? He ordered a full retreat, but it was too late. The human fleet, having emerged from their hidden orbital yards, was on them. They were not just angry, they were cold, they were efficient, and they were coming for him. Vorlag's flagship was a floating ruin. The initial kinetic bombardment had crippled its primary engines and destroyed its main weapons array. The hull was breached in a dozen places, and the atmosphere was thinning. He clung to his command chair, watching the tactical display with the dull, empty feeling of utter defeat. "Commander, the secondary fleet has been annihilated. Human forces are advancing on our position. They are not accepting our surrender." "Surrender?" Vorlag rasped, his throat burning from the acrid smoke filling the bridge. "They have not offered terms. What is their objective?" A junior officer, a young female with terrified eyes, pointed to the main viewing screen. "They are broadcasting this." The screen flickered to life, showing a human face. It was the face of a woman, her hair cropped short, her expression a mask of cold, unyielding discipline. She wore a simple uniform, no medals, no adornments. "Cathar Commander," she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You entered our space. You attacked our people. You destroyed our ships. Your war is over. We are now at war. You have no terms to accept. You have only a choice to make." Vorlag's 4 eyes widened. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. This was not how a conquered species behaved. They were supposed to be begging. They were supposed to be groveling. This woman was announcing a genocide. "What choice?" he managed to choke out. "Your crew will be spared," she continued. "Your fleet will be dismantled. Your worlds will be burned, but you will live, Commander. You will live to be the first of your kind to watch the galaxy turn on you, to know that you are the architect of your own empire's destruction. We are not merciful, we are not forgiving, but we are efficient." The transmission ended. The human ships closed in. They didn't fire. They just surrounded the remnants of the Cathar fleet, waiting. "Commander," the tactical officer stammered. "What do we do? What do they want?" Vorlag looked at the human ships, at their aggressive angles and brutal functionality. He looked back at the first debris field, the one he'd created. He saw the bodies of the human pilots, frozen, their faces contorted in anguish. He realized with a sickening clarity that the humans were not just fighting back. They were showing him the consequence of his actions. They wanted to make sure he understood. "Lower the shields," Vorlag ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "Prepare a boarding party. We will surrender." The human ships did not accept the surrender in the traditional sense. They didn't send shuttles to collect prisoners. They docked directly, their massive armored hulls grinding against the Cathar ship's damaged flanks. A boarding party of humans, clad in thick, powered suits, entered the ship. They moved with a terrifying purpose, their movements precise and economical. They didn't speak, they didn't laugh. They just took control. Vorlag was separated from his crew and escorted to the main bridge. There, he was forced to kneel before the same woman from the transmission. She stood over him, her face unreadable. She had the eyes of a creature that had seen too much. "The data we have recovered from your ships indicates you were on a mission of subjugation," she said. "You were to pacify Earth, to ensure our compliance to the Cathar Empire. Do you understand what that would have meant for my people?" Vorlag opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The terror was a physical weight, crushing his lungs. He could only stare at her, his mind a blank slate of pure, unadulterated dread. "It would have meant the death of our culture," she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "The death of our art, the death of our music, the death of our love, everything we are, everything we could have been. Gone, not with a bang, but with a whimper of a collapsing empire. You came to do that to us. You came to end us." She drew her sidearm, a bulky, practical weapon that looked like it had been designed for utility, not ceremony. "And now you understand. You understand what you almost did." She didn't shoot him. She turned and walked away. "Give him a suit and a transport. Send him home. He has a message to deliver." As he was dragged away, Vorlag looked back at the woman. Her eyes were not on him. They were on the tactical display, showing the path to the Cathar home world. The message wasn't for him. It was for the Cathar Empire. And it was a message of absolute, unwavering doom. The Galactic Council was in chaos. The rotunda, once a symbol of unity and order, now echoed with the discordant shrieks, hisses, and frantic translations of 1,000 panicked delegates. The holographic display in the center of the chamber was no longer showing trade routes or border disputes. It was showing the Cathar fleet's massacre at Saul, and then the subsequent, utterly brutal and efficient counterassault. Ambassador Vikar stood on his platform, watching the pandemonium with a grim satisfaction. He had tried to warn them. They had laughed. Now the laughter was gone, replaced by a terror so palpable it hung in the air like a fog. "This is impossible," shrieked the Gravian senator, his fluid form sloshing within his containment suit. "The Cathar are the dominant military power in our quadrant. How could a species of barely sentient primitives do this?" "They are not primitives," Vikar said, his voice cutting through the din. "They are a species that evolved on a planet with gravity so crushing that their very bones are denser than our alloys. Their atmosphere is so caustic it would strip our scales in minutes. They are a species forged in constant, unending conflict. Their weapons are not flashy. They are efficient." The Cathar ambassador Girax was a ghost of his former self. His iron hide seemed to have lost its luster, his 4 legs trembling with a barely suppressed tremor. "They are animals," he roared, his voice cracking. "They have no honor, they fight without rules. They used our own abandoned technology against us. They—" "Enough!" The Supreme Arbiter's voice, a chilling psychic whisper, silenced the chamber. "Ambassador Girax, your people started this war. Your people attacked a peaceful species. Now your people are losing. The Council will not intervene to save you from the consequences of your own aggression." A wave of murmuring rippled through the assembly. It was one thing to ignore a small skirmish. It was another to allow a major power to be annihilated. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and no one knew where the humans' ambition would take them. "This is not a matter of the Cathar's honor," Vikar pressed, his voice gaining strength. "This is a matter of the Council's survival. The humans have stated that they want peace, but their definition of peace is our definition of submission. They will not tolerate being threatened. They will not accept being treated as lessers. They are a sleeping giant that has been awakened, and if we do not treat them with respect, they will teach us all a lesson we will never forget." "I demand a full mobilization," Girax snarled, his fear turning to a desperate rage. "The Council must intervene. The humans are a threat to all of us. They must be stopped. They will not stop with us. They will come for all of you." The Supreme Arbiter's psychic presence pulsed, a wave of cold authority that silenced the Cathar ambassador's tirade. "The Council's judgment is not for you to demand, Ambassador. The matter is under review." The Council adjourned, but this time the delegates did not disperse with indifference. They huddled in groups, their voices a frantic, hushed whisper. The humans were no longer a footnote. They were a headline, a terrifying, unpredictable headline. Vikar was approached by the Gravian senator and a dozen other delegates from various worlds. They wanted to know everything: how to appease the humans, how to understand them, how to survive them. "It is not about making them afraid of us," Vikar told them. "It is about making them afraid of us, but also making them see us as equals. They don't want our worlds. They don't want our resources. They want to be respected. They want to be left alone." "And if we don't?" the senator asked, his fluid form trembling. Vikar looked at the holomap of the galaxy. The Cathar home world was now a brightly blinking red dot, a target. "Then they will show us what happens when you poke a nest of apex survivors. The Cathar are about to learn that lesson in a very, very permanent way." He couldn't help but think of the human pilot from the battle. The woman. She had not been a general or a politician. She had been a soldier, a common soldier who had been given a mission and a weapon, and she had executed her orders with a ferocity that made the galaxy tremble. The human response to the Cathar attack was not a grand declaration of war. It was a sequence of precise, devastating surgical strikes. They didn't send a single, massive fleet to engage the Cathar's home defenses. They sent a swarm. Across the Cathar Empire, chaos erupted. Human ships, operating in small, highly coordinated packs, appeared from the depths of space and struck without warning. They didn't engage in lengthy space battles. They targeted supply lines, shipyards, and communication hubs. They used the Cathar's own codes, salvaged from the wreckage of the First Fleet, to sow confusion and misinformation. The Cathar High Command was in a state of paralysis. Their military doctrine, built for conquest and subjugation, was useless against an enemy that refused to play by their rules. They couldn't predict where the humans would strike next. They couldn't even be sure the humans weren't already among them. On the Cathar home world, panic spread through the populace. The news of the devastating defeats in the Sol system had leaked, and with it came the terrifying stories of the human warriors. Whispers of their brutality, their cold efficiency, their refusal to take prisoners. The empire that had once inspired fear now inspired only terror. A human fleet, led by a scarred woman in a simple uniform, had bypassed the outer defenses and was now bearing down on the Cathar home world. Her name was Commander Ilara Vance, and she carried the weight of her world's survival on her shoulders. The Cathar Council is sending a desperate plea to the Galactic Council, her tactical officer reported. They're offering to cede territory, resources, everything they have. They want someone to stop us. Commander Vance didn't respond. She was looking at the holographic display of the Cathar home world. It was a world of fire and iron, a planet built on conquest and the blood of other species. She saw the massive defense platforms, the orbital factories, the sprawling cities below. "Do we have a response?" she finally asked. "No, Commander. The Galactic Council is in a deadlock. They are horrified by our actions, but they are also afraid to intervene. They don't know what we'll do." "Good," Vance said, her voice flat. "We don't want them to intervene. We want them to watch." She activated a new weapon system. It was a gravitic disruption field, a device that could destabilize the core of a planet, causing mass destruction from within. It was a weapon of last resort, a weapon designed not for subjugation, but for annihilation. "The Cathar are begging for mercy," a junior officer said, his voice trembling. "Commander, shouldn't we listen just once?" Vance turned to look at him. Her eyes were tired, haunted. Did they listen to our people when they were begging? Did they offer mercy to the families we just buried? No, they gave us a choice. Submit or die. We are giving them the same choice. The human fleet moved into position. The gravitic disruption field was primed. The Cathar home world lay beneath them, a planet of fear, a planet of rage, a planet of their own making. The galaxy held its breath. "This is not about revenge," Vance whispered, her words for herself alone. "This is about making sure they never, ever do this again." On the Cathar home world, the end of an empire was being written in fire and terror. The human fleet had not moved to destroy the planet outright. They had deployed a strange, shimmering device that hung in the upper atmosphere, a silent, patient predator. The Cathar Council, a gathering of the most powerful and ruthless individuals in the empire, was in a state of utter collapse. Their military had failed them. Their allies had abandoned them. Their people were in a state of blind, shrieking panic. They were desperate. They were terrified. They were defeated. "Contact the Galactic Council again," shrieked the High Chancellor, his four legs stamping in a frantic rhythm. "Beg them, offer them anything. Our worlds, our resources, our technology. We cannot face this alone." "We have tried, Chancellor," a desperate aide stammered. "They are not responding, they have gone silent. They are waiting to see what happens. They are watching." A cold dread, colder than space, washed over the Chancellor. The humans were not just a threat to his species. They were a threat to the entire galactic order. They had made the Council watch. They had made them complicit. And now the humans were going to make an example of his world. Then the transmission came. Commander Alara Vance appeared on the Cathar Council's main viewing screen. Her face was impassive, her eyes devoid of emotion. She didn't look like a conqueror. She looked like an executioner. "Cathar Council," she said, her voice flat and cold. "You have a choice. You will surrender unconditionally. Your military will be disbanded. Your territory will be ceded. Your leadership will be placed in a holding facility to be judged by your own people." The Chancellor stared at her, his mind reeling. You intend to let us live." "Living is a privilege," Vance corrected. "You are being granted that privilege. The alternative is death, an immediate and total extinction." She didn't wait for an answer. She closed the channel. The device in the atmosphere activated, its gravitic field pulsing. The planet began to shake. Buildings crumbled. The ground cracked. The sky turned a sickening shade of red. "We accept," the Chancellor screamed, his voice a terrified shriek. "We surrender, we surrender." The gravitic field stopped. The shaking subsided. The planet, damaged but intact, fell silent. The message was sent across the galaxy. The Cathar Empire had been conquered. Not destroyed, but conquered. Its leadership was on their way to a holding facility to face the judgment of their own species. The galaxy watched, and the galaxy learned a terrifying lesson. The Galactic Council was in a state of shock. The Cathar Empire, the dominant military power in their quadrant, had been broken in a matter of weeks. Not by a coalition, not by a superior power, but by a single, vengeful species from a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Vikar had been summoned to a private session with the Supreme Arbiter. The massive, insectoid creature sat in the center of a dimly lit chamber, its antennae twitching with a barely suppressed agitation. "The humans have performed the impossible," the Arbiter's voice echoed in Vikar's mind. "They have defeated a galactic power. They have the technology to destroy a planet, and they have made a statement we cannot ignore." "With respect, Arbiter," Vikar began, "they have done exactly what they said they would do. The Cathar attacked them without provocation. They responded with the full force of their capabilities. It was a defensive action, a disproportionate one, but defensive nonetheless." Defensive. The Arbiter's psychic presence flared with anger. "They annihilated a fleet, destroyed our perception of power, and threatened to destroy a planet. That is not a defensive action. That is an act of war against the peace of the galaxy." "Then what do you suggest?" Vikar countered, his voice steady. "We attack them. Declare war on a species that has already proven they can destroy a military that could crush us. They have the technology to create a localized singularity. They could collapse our entire council structure into a spatial prison." The Arbiter fell silent. The creature was thinking. The great, ancient mind was wrestling with a problem it had never faced before, an enemy it could not defeat. "They have not made any demands," Vikar continued. "They have not sought territory. They have not sought resources. They have simply made a point, a very, very loud point." "And what is that point?" the Arbiter demanded. "That they will not be threatened, that they will not be subjugated, and that anyone who tries to do so will be met with absolute annihilation." The Arbiter's antennae twitched again. "We must do something. We must restore order." "We can't," Vikar said. "Not with force. We can only acknowledge them. We can treat them with respect. We can leave them alone. We can hope they leave us alone." The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. "You are suggesting we appease them." "I am suggesting we recognize reality," Vikar replied. "The humans are not a threat to the galaxy. They are a threat to anyone who threatens them. That is a very different thing. A message arrived from the human fleet. It was a simple, short broadcast, addressed to the entire council. This is Commander Alara Vance. The Cathar threat has been neutralized. Their leadership is in custody. They will be judged by their own kind. We have no further interest in your affairs. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your resources. We want to be left alone. We will not attack you, but if you attack us, you will suffer the same fate. This is not a threat. It is a promise. The message ended. The council was silent. The Galactic Council was not a body that could be moved by threats. It was a body that could be moved by fear. And fear was what Commander Alara Vance had planted deep in their hearts. A coalition of council species, a desperate attempt to save face, had been assembled to maintain order. They positioned their fleet between the human ships and the Cathar home world, a thin wall of fragile hope against a tide of relentless purpose. Commander Vance watched the approaching coalition on her tactical display. She saw the ships, a hodgepodge of designs from a dozen different species. They were carrying the flags of peace, but they were also carrying weapons. They were not there to negotiate. They were there to stop her. "Commander," her tactical officer reported, his voice tense. "The coalition is hailing us. They are demanding we stand down. They are saying they will use force if necessary." Vance looked at the display. She saw the Cathar home world behind the coalition, a world of scared, broken people. She saw the human fleet around her, a fleet of people who had just lost friends, families, and homes. She saw the coalition, the representatives of a galaxy that had laughed at her people's suffering. "Open a channel," she ordered. "This is Commander Vance, Coalition Fleet. You have made a mistake. You are not here to protect the Cathar. You are here to protect yourselves. You are afraid we might do the same to you. You are afraid we might show you that your power is nothing but a delusion." "We are here to maintain order," the Gravian senator said, his voice trembling. "You have acted with excessive force. You have endangered the peace of the galaxy. You must stand down." "Stand down," Vance laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "We are not going to stand down. We are going to make a point. You will watch, and you will learn." She activated the gravitic disruption field. The device in the upper atmosphere of the Cathar home world pulsed with a new, terrifying energy. But it didn't target the planet. It targeted the space around it. A localized singularity formed, a tear in the fabric of reality. It pulled in the Cathar leadership, the Chancellor and his cronies, trapping them in a spatial prison, a bubble of distorted space-time. They were not dead. They were frozen, a monument to their own arrogance. The human fleet then turned and retreated. They didn't fire a single shot at the coalition. They just left. The coalition ships were left floating in the void, watching the singularity slowly dissipate, watching the trapped Cathar leadership inside, a silent, horrifying memorial. A final message was broadcast to the entire galaxy. "This is the fate of those who attack us. We don't want your worlds. We don't want your resources. We want to be left alone. If you seek to take our freedom, you will become a monument to your own foolishness. This is not a threat. It is a promise, and we keep our promises." In the silent, frozen space, the Galactic Council learned a new, terrifying truth. Humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a force of nature, a storm that could not be controlled, a fire that could not be extinguished. They were the ones who had made the galaxy tremble, and they had done it by simply refusing to be afraid. Commander Alara Vance looked back at the retreating coalition ships from her command chair. She saw the fear in their silent, drifting forms. She saw the dawning comprehension. She saw the birth of a new order in the galaxy, an order based on respect, an order based on fear, an order where humanity was not a victim but a lesson that would echo for 1,000 years, a lesson they would never, ever forget.